Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the TF Podcast. My name is Jonathan G. Blanco. My guest today is Pat Larsen. He's the founder and CEO of ZenLedger. They do crypto tax, and it's a timely time to have this conversation as taxes are due here in just a couple weeks. Pat has been a guest on the show. We've had him speak at our conferences in the past, and he's actually in the Seattle area as well. And so with that, Pat, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for having me back. Happy to be chatting with you. My name is Pat Larsen. Started ZenLedger 2.5 years ago. We've grown a lot since then. We help people and tax professionals with their cryptocurrency taxes. We'll bring in all your transactions across many wallets and exchanges and save you a lot of time. And we can look at things like tax loss harvesting to save you a lot of money or put cash in your pocket or help you trade better. So that's what we do. And we're about 16 people now, venture backed through several rounds, including VC, and it's just been a lot of fun.
Awesome. And we've talked about your background in our past episodes, but we'll kind of do a shorter version here for this episode. So real quick, when you talk about ZenLedger and kind of how that came up, there are other companies that do crypto tax. What kind of drew you into that, and why were you like, hey, like we have to solve this problem?
Yeah. Quickly, I went to the Air Force Academy for undergrad and studied chemistry. I was a Navy helicopter pilot with a couple tours, and then got my MBA at University of Chicago. And then I was in finance as an investment banker, and then I've been in tech for about 9 years now. Worked at Amazon. That's why we moved to Seattle in 2015, and have been in a couple startups. And about 3 years ago, I kind of felt that it was I was ready to see if I could become a venture-backed tech CEO, and FinTech makes a lot of sense for me because of my background. And I was looking at a good wave to ride. And 2017, crypto is obviously a very interesting FinTech play, and no one was going to keep you out of it. There were no gatekeepers. You just had to get in there and figure out something that would work well. And so I wanted to build real infrastructure, and premium SaaS models have always been attractive to me. So asking a lot of smart people in the space, I didn't feel like I was an ICO type guy. I had no token to peddle. There were tokens for paying taxes, and they didn't.
So crazy. Yeah, I can imagine.
The thesis was, let's go in, let's provide a very valuable service, and the concept of the business fits in a box mentally. It's executable, and so we were able to get a great team together, great seed funding, got a product out quickly, have really bent over backwards to make the customer experience really great, from customer service, being able to get in touch with us, and hiring for that specifically, because there's people that are so much better at that than me. But as a founder, you're doing all the customer service, and just making it as easy as possible, because it's like a TurboTax Insight. TurboTax is one of the most loved softwares, because your starting state before you use that software is high stress, high anxiety, because it's taxes, and your end state after using that software is much more relaxed because that task is off your plate. It's just the fact that you had an achy tooth removed. You don't like the dentist, but you like how you feel after you've been to the dentist and had that toothache gone. That's kind of what I wanted to do. It's very tangible, very obvious need, and it was just about execution. And then the thought that once you get in there and help people with crypto taxes, you're going to learn other things in financial analysis, blockchain analysis, FinTech, and it was just a really good thing to attempt. And 2.5 years in, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's funny that you're saying that there were projects that had token models behind them, and it seems like that would whoever created those models likely didn't understand the traditional tax business, right? Because creating some sort of loyalty or point token inside of that, doing your taxes doesn't really fit into the existing paradigm.
Yeah.
Right.
The thing that gives your fiat currency power is that you can compel your citizens to pay taxes in that fiat currency and use it.
Right. So that's interesting. Yeah, I want to dig on the SaaS model aspect and kind of go on that angle for a little bit. So let's talk about SaaS. So, from an investor standpoint, SaaS is always very attractive because it's predictable revenue. In theory, it should continuously increase over time. And there's, less like spikes, right? Because of, and I guess unless it's a yearly SaaS model, right? Because you might have like certain periods where they renew. But, why a SaaS model versus a transaction model for what you're doing? And, how did you kind of come up with that overall?
Yeah, so taxes is something you do annually, and there's a high need to have to do it. So it lends itself naturally to SaaS. It's not like I do my taxes this year and I never have to do them again, or I won't do them for 3 years. It's a very regular thing. So the cadence of tax compliance is a natural hand in glove to a SaaS annual billing model. And so it just makes sense for us to know a lot about our customer, spend a lot of time up front to get their data clean and help them. And crypto is very messy. So a lot of people need help importing wallets, creating API keys. There's just a lot of friction at the start. So again, like to justify spending so much time and effort to make sure the customer succeeds, it basically has to be a SaaS model.
Yeah. Totally makes sense. And, when you said you're venture backed, I'm curious how traditional investors thought through or what their opinions were of ZenLedger, being that like it checked the box, I'm sure, from that SaaS model perspective, but it probably unchecked the box in the sense of, being slightly unconventional. Does the SaaS model overpower it, or the majority of your investors, I don't know, quote unquote, non-traditional VCs in the sense that like they are already investing in cryptocurrency or blockchain type projects?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, you have to meet investors where you find them. So you have to go, if you're in blockchain, you have to find investors who already have a thesis and a mandate and raise their fund saying that they were in crypto and FinTech crypto and looking for infrastructure plays. Like that's who we went after. We never convinced someone of the fact that this was good to invest in if they weren't already convinced of it. So once they're already looking for opportunities in that industry, then you answer the other questions: team, timing, business model, things like that.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, right? That someone has to have it in the thesis and then basically be bought into the system or the model or the vertical. It seems like so much entrepreneurs try to ram their idea down the throats of investor VC that just frankly isn't ever going to invest. And it's like it's convincing someone to do something that's outside of their normal behavior, and maybe you'll be that one person that finally convinces them and changes that what their opinion is, but it's pretty unlikely. And so, to your point, if you can focus on the folks that have a level of interest in what you're doing and spend more time there, as opposed to focusing on people that don't have that interest and then trying to convince them, you're probably going to have more success on that side.
Yeah, I mean, it's a virtuous cycle, right? So our seed investments, we were pitching in December 2017, January 2018. So crypto assets were going through the roof. A lot of people were newly rich. The IRS was suing Coinbase. And we had a lot of finance and tech savvy people worried about their tax implications because they'd just been in a bunch of ICOs and had Bitcoin go to 20,000 and everything. I was closing seed investments in like half-hour Zoom calls from Japan, calling in the United States, because like it was such an obvious problem. They were already spending money on it themselves. And then the feedback from them helped me when we were pitching larger angels for larger checks. Some of them were a little more generalist, and you get feedback from them as well. And so it's over time. Like I wasn't pitching VCs from day one. I mean, maybe I was a little bit, but I have an MBA and some big corporate experience too. But it's over time. Like you can start with the absolute niche investors, which is always a great idea. The person who's 5 years ahead of you in your business idea, like is a great person to, or 10 years or 15 years, right? Because they'll get it immediately and they'll give you great feedback. And then like a slight generalist might also be good because they'll ask you broad common sense questions that you might be skipping over as well. So, the spray and pray approach works if you're in a learning mode and you're just doing the fundraising full time. But if you're trying to run the company as well and you desperately need that capital right away, then you do have to focus.
Exactly. A lot of people don't realize that going through a fundraising process is a full-time job. You're right. And then you also have to run your company. So, depending on your team, maybe the CEO takes that on completely and someone else starts to run the business, but it's probably pretty unlikely in a early stage startup that you have the ability to afford that, right? Time, not just from a cost perspective, but from a time and influence on the company. So I'm assuming you did both hats on that.
Yeah, I mean, I joke like I was the chief capital officer and the chief survival officer. Like my whole job was to have money, bring in capital somehow so that developers could build the product and we could market it. Right, that was most of my job, and just making decisions along the way. And I was also doing customer service and the marketing or whatever. But I would say it depends on who you are and what stage you are in your career and what the idea is, how much capital it needs and everything. But I had very senior co-founders at CTO, and he was great in pitches, but he was also great in managing the dev team. So I didn't have to be looking at wireframes and messing around with the app. Like I could just go run around, fly to San Francisco, New York, go raise capital. So your team composition really matters, and who you are, your capabilities, your experiences really matter. We all our VC investments, obviously we pitched with the CEO and CTO, but usually the first conversation was just me, the CEO, talking to them, and then the seed investments were a mixture of just a pitch from me, and then sometimes a team pitch.
Yeah. How does that team pitch usually go? Comparatively to the CEO pitch? Like in that team pitch, are they less talking to you and wanting to hear from the technical side, or is it a concert in how you guys are talking to the investor?
Yeah. So again, like, choose your business idea and your co-founders wisely. So, Brian Starbucks had, my CTO has a lot of experience, and a couple of our seed investors were just like, "Oh, Brian, I'm in. Thanks for calling. Tell me about your startup now." Because it was just like, so that was always fun. And then other times, like, it would depend on what the agenda of the call was and who we were talking to. If the person we were talking to is highly technical, then I would always make sure that it was a CTO, like a technical to technical talk. If the person was very non-technical, I would usually just take the first call completely by myself, and do the product demo. And I could talk through technical stuff enough, but like if your investor is asking about, and it's SaaS and it's like consumer facing and they're asking tech infrastructure questions, then it's not the right path. Like they should be asking more about business model and things like that.
Yeah, totally. It is funny when you start getting into a conversation and you notice that the investor is asking you questions that are either trying to trick you or are more like not relevant to the situation. And it's like, you have to have this thought process. It's like, wait a second, like, is this person just wasting both of our time right now? Or like, are they legitimately interested in, what this looks like in that infrastructure type phase?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, so like if you're an AI startup, then it's always going to be a technical conversation, right? If you're a biotech company, it's going to be, whatever, doctor to doctor chat or PhD to PhD pitches. So it's all dependent, right? If you're making a new fizzy drink, like you're just gonna, let them taste the drink and then talk about marketing and distribution.
Right, exactly. Or if you're if your product is more of a social construct, or lending itself to human psychology and how people interact with something, right? Like the technology is going to vary and change, and whatever you built that tech stack in for your MVP might be completely different for like V2. Overall, it's more, I think a lot of people don't realize how commoditized technology is unless you're in like those very highly technical type of companies, right? But for the most part, you're just leveraging existing tech and then modifying it to whatever fits your need. And it's more the strategy and the architecture of how you're utilizing that to best serve you, right? So like, for instance, if I wanted to start a crypto tax software, I'm going to come at it with, my points of view, and I'm gonna have to study and I have to research, and chances are it's going to look completely different from whatever you're doing because I don't have the same knowledge that you do. I don't have the same understanding of like how things should go. But like we could still use the same software or stack, right? But it doesn't mean it's going to be the same product. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. It's like, there's a significant amount of planning and strategy and architecture that makes the software stack relevant. It's not the software stack itself that is relevant.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of decisions, right? So it was more us saying like, look, here's our emphasis, like UI, UX. Hey, it's live. You can just try it. That's only, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Sometimes it's better to pitch the wireframes rather than pitch something that's like 90% working, 10% buggy. But it's always fantastic to pitch something that works rock solid and already has, thousands of customers. So that's only great too. We actually just had a Big Four accounting partner use us and a couple other competitors, and our software was the closest to his hand calculations over several years. And so he's using us now for his personal taxes. Like most SaaS doesn't have an arithmetic component unless it's like payroll SaaS. Like most SaaS is like workflow performance, right? So we have kind of an interesting SaaS where you can get to a right number and you can verify it, or you can get to several scenario analysis where you want to do aggressive or conservative accounting. I think most businesses aren't that way. So it's another interesting difference in where we can guide the outcomes and verify the quality of our product.
Yeah. So shifting along to where we're at today, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so for founders that are looking at fundraising right now, and it also on the investor side, I'm assuming you probably have a slight pulse on that. What are your kind of thoughts or advice for someone who's trying to fundraise right now? And similarly, what is your advice to investors that are looking at deals?
Yeah, I mean, so we definitely are in a funding freeze from what I can tell, and you can just jump on TechCrunch to see. But from the IPO market to D, C, B, A, seed, like it's all kind of gunked up the works. You do probably have a lot more potential founders who've been jamming on ideas lately, which is great, and you do have a lot of dry powder. So as a founder, you should be networking intensely now. Like if you have an idea and you're not able to line up Zoom calls, like you kind of need to reassess your outreach plan, because people are available, they're talking, and they're not traveling. So there's a lot more time in the day. So I think it is a good time to start networking and reach out to people. I'm not sure it's a great time to get checks. You are seeing larger checks because there is capital and there is pressure from funds to deploy their capital so they can get the next tranche and things like that. But if there's not much visibility into the future, into whatever that liquidity event is, we're just going to be in a tough situation. We saw that 2008 to 2010, 2000 to 2002. Like we're in that kind of phase. We're in the first 3 months of a very tough funding environment for startups.
Yeah, most definitely. And what's interesting about all that is how there's just so many mixed signals out there, right? So if you're a very first time founder and you've never raised venture capital before, and you've never started a company before, I'm not trying to discourage anybody, but like your chances are going to be more difficult on raising your very first round ever.
Yeah.
right now, right? Versus like if you're someone who's had multiple exits, you know, you're very desirable because of the fact that there is going to be limited dollars. They're going to want to make it, you know, focus on that, right? So it's yeah, it's definitely a tough time all around. But you know, I'm a big fan of focusing on revenue, and that's one thing I always try to encourage startups to do is, you know, try to prove revenue, however big or small that revenue is, and then that in turn will also make you more attractive to an investor if that is what you're seeking, right? Some level of
Yeah.
venture capital.
Yeah. There's all these things you can do to, I think of it as little experiments, right? Don't try to hit a home run. Try to incrementally say, hey, like in the next 2 weeks, how much time, how much cost do I need into this experiment, whatever that is, to learn more and to get to a decision point, right? And as you're doing a startup, you can be like, hey, how quick till we get a live MVP? Is it 12 weeks for something that kind of works and shows that? Okay, it's probably worth it to push through that and then pitch investors. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then we have to think like, okay, how much cash do we have in 6 weeks? Like, what can we accomplish for 6 weeks of pitching or something? You know, like think it through rigorously and incrementally so that you're giving the best bang for the buck in terms of de-risking the venture, proving the business model, proving the team, getting data like traffic data or whatever. Like think about the things that make for a compelling case and how you can, you know, get varying degrees of that information in.
Yeah, totally. And then similarly is like if you have the opportunity to have maybe those initial conversations or whatever exchange that you had, and you know, ask if you can provide updates, and most VCs are going to say yes, or most investors are going to say yes, right? And then provide those updates and make sure that you are having you know, meaningful improvements on what you've been doing
Yeah, you know,
overall.
just rigorously like be in the habit of typing something up every month, and communicating that out. And then, you know, maybe it's a quarterly thing, but I never ask permission to keep potential investors in the loop. I just send it to them and let them tell me to stop.
Yeah.
And that's worked pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, as we're a couple weeks away from the tax season being like, how does that impact folks in just overall crypto? And actually, before we even get to that side, is um, have there been times where tax deadlines have been pushed out by the government in this fashion?
I think it's unprecedented.
Yeah.
I don't think a July 15th, you know, April 15th to July 15th move has ever happened. You know, we just haven't been in a pandemic since then. We haven't fought a war on U.S. soil. So World War II came right after the Great Depression when income taxes started. But you know, besides that, yeah, we're in unprecedented times.
Mm-hmm.
So July 15th is the new deadline. So if you owe the government taxes on July 15th, you have to send in a check for what you owe. Um, if the government owes you a refund, you should be filing taxes immediately because you're just giving them a tax-free loan, or an interest-free loan. And then, you know, so you should think about getting it done.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for those they're thinking about getting it done and so forth, same things apply. I'm assuming that you can still do a deferral. Is a deferral still 6 months from the tax deadline, or how are they doing that? Do you know?
I haven't seen
Or is there no
very clear
deferrals?
guidance.
Yeah.
So what you can do is, say you owe the government $1,000 for your taxes, right? You have to send in that check for $1,000 on July 15th. You don't have to send in the paperwork that proves that you owe, you know, $1,000 and not $2,000 or not $0. Like, you don't have to file your taxes until October 15th if you file an extension. But whatever money you owe, you do need to pay on July 15th, or otherwise you incur like fines and interest through to when you actually pay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you file this year could impact stimulus checks. So kind of think about that. If the last time you filed is 2018 and that's what's on the books, and you know your income is up or down, you know, like that'll affect stimulus payments. If your income's way down, you may want to like file your taxes very quickly to change the income on the books.
Good point. Good point. So when it comes to crypto taxes now, we've talked about this before, but basically taxable events is when you report the gain like after, and you essentially move out of that crypto, right?
Yeah.
Can you kind of give a little school lesson on that real fast?
Yeah. So you pay taxes on the capital gains you make. You don't pay taxes when you buy 1 Ethereum with cash. That's not a taxable event. You've already been taxed on the earning of that cash somehow. Now that 1 Ethereum is yours, and there's no tax on it. If you hold that 1 Ethereum forever, you never pay taxes on that 1 Ethereum. Just like if you bought 1 Tesla stock today, and you never sold it, you would never pay taxes on that Tesla stock, and there's no dividend there. But so the taxable events in crypto come from a couple places. One is if that Ethereum that you buy at $200 goes up to $220, and then you sell it for $220, you've made $20 of gain. And depending on your income tax bracket and how long you're holding that Ethereum for, that $20 is taxed at different rates, and you have to report it. If you have a loss, if that $200 Ethereum goes to 180 and you sell it for a $20 loss, you can offset taxes that you owe with that $20 loss. And then mining and staking, things that are income to you, you have to pay taxes on that as well at a different tax rate. So you have to monitor the airdrops, the mining, the staking, the forks, the DeFi interest, any payments you receive in crypto. Like you have to monitor all of this and report it as taxes.
Yeah. So that could probably be pretty confusing to most people.
Yeah, it is a burden. It's very difficult because in traditional fiat economy, most people just get a W-2 and that's all they worry about. And then if you have some investments, E-Trade or Schwab or something will just send you a standard document, and you can just plug it right in. You can Google how to look at a 1099 interest and put it in, or if you're using tax professionals, they'll absolutely know what to do. But in crypto, it's incredibly complex because the systems don't report cleanly. You're trading all around the world. You're trading crypto to crypto pairings that never get priced into US dollars. And so all those things, and if you have hundreds or thousands of trades, you really need software to understand what the overall financial performance of over the last year or 2 years or 3 years was. One of our seed investors was the number 30 employee at Coinbase, and I actually flew combat missions with him in the Navy. And he used our software and restated 3 or 4 years of taxes and found that he'd overpaid by $235,000. So
Wow.
he was really happy about that.
So he can go back and basically redo those taxes.
Yeah, there's like I think it's 7 years to restate taxes. So you can always do that if you overpaid. And then, if you underpaid or something, we also had one client who refiled his 2017 taxes for the 3rd time in a row because he was in a lot of ICOs. And once he'd refiled, he got a letter from the IRS saying, "Hey, thanks for refiling your taxes. We're closing out a criminal investigation we had open on you." So he was definitely trying to comply. He had no idea there was a criminal investigation open on him, and because the government won't tell you that. But they're the IRS is watching. They've sent out tens of thousands of letters. They very much care about compliance, and so it's very good to take this stuff seriously.
Yeah, definitely. That is serious. Crazy. Well, real quick, we're both in Seattle. We live in the Chaz. No, we don't live in the Chaz, but there's lots of interesting things going on with the BLM and with just protest and what's happening. What are your thoughts on Chaz overall?
Yeah,
that's the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or what's CHAP or CHOP? What's Capitol Hill? I don't know what CHOP stands for.
I don't know. I can't remember what the CHOP stands for.
Opportunity. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I've been kind of. I have a bad habit of being more of a. What's up?
Sorry, I was gonna say, have you gone there?
I haven't. I've had friends
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 3 kids, and so there's a strong imperative to just stay home there rather than walk around with them on my shoulders
Yeah.
through through a sketchy zone. I think it's overblown. I've kind of been telling people that don't live in Seattle that ask about it that it's it's mostly a farmer's market. I lived in Chicago. Literally 100 people got shot in Chicago over the 3-day weekend, which is sad but not uncommon. And so there's much bigger and important things to worry about. Thankfully, when all the protests were happening, and I was very worried that it would speed coronavirus spread, because I saw people hopping into cars together, teenagers and 20-year-olds, like people who were not socially distancing anymore, right?
Hmm.
And I think coronavirus is still a very big deal, and a much bigger deal than something like the Seattle Autonomous Zone, which is ending today or tomorrow, because there's been I think 3 people shot, 1 person killed in the last couple of days, which again is very serious, but in the grand scheme of our well-armed country is like not, yeah, and it's a city of millions of people is not something I'm losing sleep over. Like I'm not staring out my window constantly worried that the Chaz is spreading.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that we're having all these conversations and experiments, right? Everyone knows that we do need justice reform, because it goes to inequality of wealth, of income, of opportunity, of justice, of education. There's just a lot of inequality. We're a very wealthy country with 330 million people, and we're very lucky, and but a lot of people are not participating and not benefiting from all that. And
Hmm.
this is the natural outcome of all that pressure building over decades of, you know, you look at any region and there's an opioid crisis, there's a manufacturing plant crisis, there's an urban crisis. There actually isn't a crime crisis. There's a criminal justice crisis, but there's not a crime crisis, right? Like things
Hmm.
were way worse in the 70s and 80s in terms of crime, right? And so I think that all that pressure built up, along with the quarantine, led to this massive outflood of energy, right? And as a chemist or whatever, a scientist, like energy wants to go around, wants to reorganize,
Yeah.
and it's something that's needed, and things are always messy, right? Like I think people lack perspective, and if you just sat and thought what it would be like to be a citizen in some other country in the 1930s or something, in between World War I, World War II, during the Great Depression, with pandemics, and still living with polio or whatever, and having like half your kids die before age 5, like that was a rougher time, right? Like we have no perspective for these things.
Well, right. Well, it's crazy because like for us, people of our age, this is probably, I don't know, for me at least, this is the craziest thing I've seen in the US. Like where like just overall, right? Pandemic plus the inequality plus, protests, right? Like all that combination. But yeah, right, when you put it into perspective is that, there hopefully is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, there's obviously political factors that also keep people on edge, right? I say I've been saying that 2020 is like a video game, and the end guy is what happens when after the election in November. And there's probably like an extra level being the month of December. Like who knows what December brings? Like we know there's an election in November, and we know no matter what happens, half the population is going to be super pissed off,
Yeah.
regardless of who wins. And then December, I think that's when the aliens come back, and
Yeah.
they're just like, all right, we're done
Yeah.
with this experiment.
Yeah. And
So
Americans think that every problem is an American problem,
yeah.
and it's not. Like political polarization is sweeping across the world. Dictators are taking over. Billions of people are ruled by dictatorships, right? And then
Hmm. it's
uh,
it's like over, I think it's like nearly half the population or maybe even over is ruled by dictators.
yeah, and then
It,
yeah.
And some of those dictators were, were elected, officially
Yeah.
elected, but we all know about, things like voter rigging and that sort of stuff. So
So yeah, you get elected president, and then you declare yourself president for life at some point, right?
right.
It was a Latin American trope, but it's not just for
It's
for
true.
that.
It's true.
But yeah, like, I imagine, so the 60s were worse as well, right? Um, because we aren't getting drafted into senseless war.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been born without the Vietnam War. My mom's Vietnamese. My mom's side of the family like fled northern Vietnam in 1954 when the French were kicked out of there, and then they fought on the U.S. side and had to flee in 1975 with the fall of Saigon. So that was a rough 20 years for
Wow.
them,
So
And then my dad's side of the family is
sorry. So your mom left in 75 from,
yeah.
So did she flee like the boats and so forth and like
that? So most of my mom's family got to get on planes, I think, and fly to Guam. But some of our family were on boats. Some of our family were killed during the Vietnamese Civil War. It was a civil war where millions of Vietnamese people died.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that America was, bombing a lot of Southeast Asia at the same time.
Right.
And the Chinese were supplying arms and the Russians. So it was a mess, right?
Totally.
And then, and I'm sure my dad's side, they had to deal with all sorts of civil wars and world wars, living in, Western Europe. Like, if you look at any history of any country, it's just a massive series of destructive civil wars.
Where was your dad? Where'd you say your dad is from?
Irish, German, and Norwegian.
Got it.
And I think his side of the family came over in like the 1850s, and he was born in Toledo, Ohio. But if you just look at history just briefly, like, my wife's Japanese, and the Japanese invented the samurai sword so they could kill other Japanese people better, more efficiently. Like, that's why it was built. There was a warring period in Japan. So it's just like, we're in this human condition. We want to think that we're post history, right? But we're not. We're still humans and we're still like living the same kind of chaotic lives that we always have.
Totally. And the warfare has shifted, right? Like, before it was just, straight, combat, and, war is cyber, war is economic, war is social. It's crazy.
I think one of the biggest stories is that India and China are nuclear armed. There's 3 billion people between them, and they're fighting over water rights in the Himalayan, watershed. That's going to be very important. Like, if we can't hook up a bunch of nuclear reactors to the ocean and, desalinize it, like, we're going to fight over water rights around the world, and that's going to be a big thing.
Right. And be prepared. I mean, I could talk about, I've studied that quite a bit, like just how, water rights are even privatized. Like, Nestle owns a ton of water. I mean, like, this isn't conspiracy stuff. Like, this is like legit real stuff that, lots of very wealthy families own big water rights in foreign countries. So yeah, combating over water when potable water is becoming more and more scarce. Yeah. Even though the planet is 70% water, is pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things, right? There's the things in the universe that would be true whether or not people existed, like math, physics, chemistry. Those, it doesn't matter if we're here or not. Those things are happening and they're true. And then there's all the things that are only happening because of humans. That's history, sociology, politics, military, economics. Like, all those things are how people compete for resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so nothing's really changed there. Our tools have changed, but the base motivations for why we compete our resources and how we do that really haven't, I don't think.
Yeah. It is gnarly what's happening in China and India right now, and it's just a footnote in what we get for our information. Like, there's very little info on it happening right now, which is scary as well. So everybody do your research, find out what's happening in the world. It'll be interesting to see if the U.S. has to take a side on that. I think it's probably pretty clear that the U.S. would take India's side there, most likely, but maybe not. I mean, maybe they just play Switzerland there as long as they can. Doubtful though. Yeah, you're gonna fly helicopters again?
I don't. So I was a professional Russian roulette player, and I got to retire, and so I have no desire to sit back down at the table. Right? I'm a huge adrenaline junkie. I love to drive fast. I love to ride motorcycles. I love to fly and do adrenaline sports. But I don't own a motorcycle. I don't fly recreationally. I drive a minivan, and that's my life now.
Cool, man. It's because the kids, right? The
Yeah.
kids and the phase. Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
funny. Like I used to do super crazy things. Like, when I would snowboard, I'd snowboard in the trees, and I'd, do jumps and crazy stuff. And, when we went to Mexico, one time, and I went boogie boarding. And this is after we had our son, and it was with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law. And the wave crashed like just right, and I got knocked out, and I'm in the waves, and like I'm like kind of like walking around, and I can't figure it out. And they had to like come in and like rescue me out of there, and they're like, hey, who are you, whatever. And I couldn't answer those questions. So anyways, I had a concussion, and if they weren't there, I would have drowned. Anyways, like from that moment, I'm like, I'm not doing anything stupid anymore. Like I have a whole family that I have to take care of. I can't do anything super crazy. And like there's some people who's like, oh well, life's about risk. It's not worth, it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I just, put
Life's
the
actually
odds in
about
there.
reproduction.
Right.
Like, that's the only reason you're alive, is that every ancestor of yours survived long enough to reproduce from like single-celled organisms. Like
Right.
life is about nothing else besides reproduction.
What I do like to say is, like, I don't know, when I'm in my 90s, God willing, I get to that. I want to that's when I want to do all the crazy stuff. Yeah. It's like, I've lived the full life. I'm going to start jumping out of airplanes. And
yeah, heroin's obviously awesome. I haven't tried it.
You'll wait till you're not.
but it's clearly amazing. It's clearly better than anything else you can be doing with your time.
We'll be in our late 90s jumping out of airplanes and doing drugs.
Or like hopefully if we make it that far, it'll be a Matrix thing where you can have all those experiences without the risk and addiction, and not know the difference, I guess.
Yeah, I remember seeing this video of this woman who's, I don't know, she's like in her late 90s or maybe turning 100, and for her birthday she wanted to be arrested by the police. And so the police show up at her house, and and she's like pretending to fight them and hit them and stuff, and then they handcuff her and put her in the back of the car, and of course they're taking her like super gently and take the pictures. Thought it was pretty funny that like at 100 years old you're like, oh, I've never been arrested. I want to be arrested now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all house money at that point.
Yeah, totally. Well, Pat, what is as you know, the question I like to ask to end my show is, what's the question that you have for other people that they can think about and answer as they go about their day?
Yeah, I would ask, how can you be kinder to yourself and others right now? I think that'll have a lot of benefits regardless. So that's what I'd go with.
I like it. Be kind. Do unto others. My mom would just say, like, because that golden rule, right? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. But then she would throw in never, but sorry, do unto others and that do unto others thing, but then but never accept something that's done to you that you would never do to someone else. Like, never, like, don't allow someone to like do something to you that you would just never do. So
I think the silver rule, I think Nassim Taleb tweeted about that too. So that would be like, don't harm others and don't allow others to harm you.
Yeah, totally. Nice, man. Well, Pat, what are some good ways that people can follow you or stay in touch with you?
Yeah, on Twitter, it's just at Patrick Larsen, PatrickLarsen. You can go to ZenLedger.io and check us out there as well.
Excellent. Thanks, man.
Well, thanks so much. It was fun to chat.
Awesome. Me too.
Bye.
Everybody, thank you for listening to another episode of the TF podcast. Please make sure that you're liked and subscribed wherever it is that you listen to podcasts and YouTube. Also, please do us a favor and rank this with the stars. Feel free to fill those all up. It goes a long way and helps us get our podcast in front of more people. You can follow me on Twitter at @JGProduct or @TFLabs_, as well as learn more about what we're doing with the studio and with other events at tflabs.io. Thanks so much, and we'll see y'all soon.